Hello friends, welcome back to our channel. Today I have a story for you, not about kings or heroes, but about time, faith, and a winter that almost stopped both. So sit back with a warm cup of coffee, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because this story, the Swiss watchmakers in winter, might just warm your heart. The town that forgot to tick, high in the snowy valleys of Switzerland, where the Alps touch the clouds and silence feels like music, lies a small town called Bernovia. For centuries, Bernovia was known for one thing: watches. Every street echoed with the soft, rhythmic tick-tick of precision. But this winter was different. Factories were closing. Machines were replacing hands. The magic of handcrafted watches, the pride of Switzerland, was fading into the cold. And in one small corner of this silent town stood an old wooden workshop, its roof heavy with snow, its windows glowing faintly in the dim winter light. Inside sat an old man, his hands trembling slightly, but his eyes still sharp, Mr. Emil Roth, the last of the Roth watchmakers. The last watchmaker. Emil's family had been making watches for over 150 years. His grandfather built timepieces for nobles and explorers. His father designed watches that crossed oceans and won awards. But now Emil sat alone, polishing the same old brass tools, watching the snow fall outside. Tourists no longer came to buy handmade watches. They bought factory-made ones, shiny, digital, fast. Emil often said softly, "Everyone wants watches that run fast, but no one wants the time to slow down and feel life." He looked at an old photograph hanging on the wall. A smiling boy holding a small pocket watch. His grandson Luca. Luca had gone to the city 2 years ago. He wanted to become a designer, not a watchmaker. He said, "Grandpa, the world runs on screens now. No one wears time on their wrist anymore." Those words broke Emil's heart more than the cold ever could. The winter storm. One evening, as the wind howled outside, Emil heard a loud crack. A tree branch had fallen onto the workshop roof. Snow began to slip inside, and water dripped onto his old wooden bench. He rushed to cover his precious watches with a cloth. But one, his father's masterpiece, slipped from the table and shattered. A tear rolled down Emil's cheek. "Even time can break," he whispered. That night, the entire town lost power. No lights, no heat, just the endless white outside and the sound of the storm. Emil lit a candle and sat near his workbench, wrapping himself in an old coat. Then a knock at the door. A stranger in the snow. When Emil opened the door, he saw a young woman, her face pale from the cold, holding something wrapped in cloth. "Please, my watch stopped working," she said softly. "It belonged to my father. Can you fix it?" Emil looked at her. She couldn't have been older than 25. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her fingers were frozen. He took the cloth and unwrapped it, a small silver pocket watch, old but beautiful. He smiled faintly. This is a Roth & Sons 1912. My father made this." Her eyes widened. "Your father?" "Yes," Emil said proudly. "He built this for a pilot during the Great War. Tell me, how did you find it?" The girl hesitated. "It was my grandfather's. He said this watch always brought him home safely." Emil nodded. "Then it's my duty to make sure it ticks again." He set the candle close and began working. Tiny screws, gentle hands, quiet focus. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, time slowly came back to life. After 2 hours, Emil wound the watch and placed it near his ear. Tick, tick, tick. The girl smiled. "You brought it back." Emil handed it to her and said, "I didn't fix the watch. I fixed the memory." She paid him what she could and left. As she walked away through the snow, Emil felt something warm return to his heart. The letter. A week later, when the sun finally returned to Bernovia, Emil found an envelope at his door. It had no name, just a seal of gold and a line that read, "For the last watchmaker of Bernovia." Inside was a letter. "Dear Mr. Roth, I am the director of the National Museum of Switzerland. The young woman you helped last week is my assistant. She told me about your work and your legacy. We are hosting an exhibition on the art of time, featuring master watchmakers. We would be honored if you could display your family's creations. Please consider this our invitation. Emil couldn't believe it. After years of being forgotten, someone still remembered the value of hands over machines. He smiled, and for the first time in years, the workshop filled with the sound of tools again. A journey of time. Emil spent the next month restoring old watches, each one with a story, each tick a piece of his life. There was his grandfather's compass watch, his father's aviator chronograph, and even his own first pocket piece from 1956. But one thing still felt incomplete: Luca. He hadn't spoken to his grandson in months. So Emil wrote a letter. "Dear Luca, I know the world has changed, but remember, time doesn't exist on a screen. It exists in moments. I am going to the National Museum next month. I wish you could come, Grandpa." He didn't know if the letter would ever reach him. The day of the exhibition, the big day arrived. The museum hall was shining with glass displays, spotlights, and the quiet hum of admiration. Emil stood in front of a small case labeled "The Legacy of Roth Watchmakers." People admired his work, whispered words like "masterpiece" and "timeless art." But Emil's eyes kept wandering toward the door, hoping Luca would appear. Hours passed. The event was ending. Emil began to pack up. Then he heard a familiar voice. "Grandpa." He turned around. There stood Luca, holding a small box. Snowflakes clung to his hair, and his eyes were filled with tears. "Luca, you came." Emil's voice trembled. Luca hugged him tightly. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I was wrong. Machines may make watches, but only hands like yours can give them a heart." He opened the box. Inside was a digital smartwatch. "But look," Luca said, smiling. "I built something new, inspired by your designs. I call it the Roth Hybrid. It has a digital face, but a mechanical soul." Emil touched it gently. "You built this?" "Yes, and it ticks." Together, they placed the new watch beside the old ones, the bridge between two generations. The crowd clapped, the director smiled, and Emil whispered, "Time finally found its way home." The last winter, a few months later, when the snow returned to Bernovia, Emil sat in his workshop again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Luca had moved back, and the old workshop was alive once more. Tourists came to see the legendary Roth watches, and Luca's hybrid designs were gaining global fame. One evening, as Emil watched the sunset through the frosted window, he said softly, "Do you hear that, Luca?" "What, Grandpa?" "The ticking. That's the sound of life, reminding us that even in the coldest winters, time and love never really stop." Luca smiled and placed his hand on his grandfather's. "We'll keep ticking, Grandpa. Always." The fire glowed, the snow fell, and outside, in the quiet streets of Bernovia, time began to live again. And that, friends, was the story of the Swiss watchmakers in winter. A tale of passion, patience, and the warmth that survives even in the coldest snow. Remember, in life, it's not how fast your time runs, but how beautifully it ticks. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more such stories of hope and humanity.